Hello chess friends and welcome to Azarov Chess channel and welcome back to the Norway Chess tournament in 2024 that's going on now in the beautiful town of Stavanger in Norway. So we have now the clash of the leaders, we have now the clash of the titans, we have now the most spectacular match between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. So the first game they played today ended with a draw, so the classical time format game ended with a draw, which meant the players had to play an additional Armageddon game in which Magnus Carlsen had only 7 minutes on the clock and Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces had 10 minutes on the clock. But of course white needs to win the game. If the game ends with a draw, then of course black is a winner in this particular case. If Magnus gets a draw, he would be the winner of this Armageddon game. So let's start now immediately with this game. This is really brilliant one in my opinion. Although it's a fast time format, this is epic chess. This is simply brutal, sharp, really beautiful opening prep chess that they have shown us here. So in my opinion, really one of the best chess games so far in this event for sure. So with the white pieces here, Hikaru Nakamura opened with the move d4. Magnus' response was knight to f6. We have c4, e6, knight to c3, and after d5 we have now the queen's gambit decline, and after c takes d5 by Hikaru we have now e takes d5, the exchange variation. We have now bishop to g5, the positional variation, simply trying of course to somehow take out this knight and then maybe also take out the pawn. So that's why Magnus first of all defends the knight, and now e3. Pretty standard stuff, pretty solid ideas. Many I think games are also won by black in this particular lines. Most of the times I think the game ends with a draw. The exchange variation in the beginning is of course a simplified line in which you don't have to calculate so much, but even in this positional battles you see now how Hikaru Nakamura will really spice up the game with really brilliant opening prep. So after e3, h6 by Magnus, bishop to h4, and now bishop to g4 by Magnus hitting the queen. This moment Hikaru uses now and plays actually an amazing theoretical novelty, plays now the move f3, kicks away the bishop, and has now a good preparation to launch a central breakthrough with the potential move e4. This move e4 cannot be played immediately, but as a long-term plan, as a strategic goal, I think it's now the most important idea now for white. We have now bishop to d3 by Hikaru. He prepares still the move e4, c5 by Magnus. Magnus doesn't want to tolerate any pawn majorities in the center of the board, because if you allow that, if you play passively, maybe here instead of c5 you play c6, then maybe in some lines you're allowing e4, then e5, maybe f4, then f5. With this move c5, Magnus immediately undermines the potential d4 square here. E4 is of course now much harder to play for Hikaru. Knight from g to e2, knight to c6, putting more pressure against the pawn on d4, and now for Carlsen also by Magnus, and now rook to e1, again with the same prep, trying somehow to break and enter with the move e4. Magnus of course competes with rook to e8, bishop to c2 by Hikaru. Also quite interesting idea, maybe if possible also try, I don't know, queen to d3, bishop takes f6, maybe even deliver checkmate. But with this bishop to c2 move, I think Hikaru announced really a beautiful possibility to somehow hit the weak h7 square, somehow maybe build a really beautiful bishop and queen battery. So Magnus continues with rook to c8, and now Hikaru says your bishop is a little bit exposed here on e6. I will attack it, I will try to get my bishop here, I will try to continue here with two bishops in this potentially open game. Of course in open games the bishops are much better in dynamic games, so this position is I think not so far away from exploding in the center of the board, from I don't know really being open. So that's why chasing the bishops I think is also a good plan here for Hikaru Nakamura. And Magnus, I think didn't find here maybe the optimal solution. Of course he had only 7 minutes on the clock. Who could maybe see the best line? But actually in this particular position bishop to d7 was quite interesting, and that's exactly the suggested move by top engines. I'm not sure how many of us would even consider this move, because obviously you're leaving your d5 square unprotected, but in this line, look at this would be very crazy. Bishop to f6, bishop to f6 you take, but now after something like c takes d4, look at this. White can build this queen and bishop better, but actually it's defendable. And white, I think, would even sacrifice here some material just in order to somehow get the queen finally on h7. But the engine says here black is perfectly fine. Black cannot get checkmated. We'll eventually get the queen on f6. And now after knight to h5, you keep the queen here connected, of course, to the bishop. And now after something like bishop to g6, you take. And after rook to e3, you cannot take, of course, because queen to e3 comes with a check. So you would have to even tolerate this unpleasant, this annoying pawn on e3. So it's just a crazy line. But I wanted to show you how actually Hikaru Nakamura's preparation, this queen and bishop battery, was really stunning, because here Hikaru put really much pressure against Magnus Carlsen's defense, and in fast time formats no one can really see this types of sequences. So that's why for knight to f4, Magnus tried now to stay connected with the bishop to the pawn on d5, tried now simply to release the pressure in the center of the board. C takes d4, knight to e6, we have f takes e6, e takes d4, and now knight takes d4. You see, Magnus also found good tactical ideas, because queen to d4 obviously is not working because of bishop to c5. So it's just a different sequence that Magnus Carlsen saw in this fast time format. But after knight to d4, Hikaru plays really like a machine here. Bishop to g6, hitting the rook. Here Hikaru continues the attacking flow. Bishop to f2, you have to react. Knight to c6, and now Hikaru has, I think, here solid position. Here white should be much better. This position is exploding. This position is an open battle. As I mentioned, this could happen, and now with the bishop pair, you're much better here, especially I think also because of this light square problems in front of black's king. You will eventually get maybe again your queen and bishop battery. Very tough now to play this position for Magnus Carlsen. So d4 by Magnus. Of course, when you have an isolated pawn, you have to advance it. At least Magnus gets a space advantage. But now knight to e2, good move by Hikaru, simply putting more pressure against the pawn on d4. Bishop to c5, Magnus protects. Knight to f4. You see now, the position is really unpleasant here for Magnus. g6, f7, h7 weak. The bishop will retreat, and I don't know, you get the knight maybe on g6. So too many options simply here for white. Here Magnus continued with the move knight to d5, which gave here Hikaru Nakamura really even better chances now to win the game. A better choice was simply to retreat to d6 here. Again, very hard to see. Again, it's just a stockfish line that you have to see here. Then after something like knight to e2, then you play knight to d5. But the most important thing is here that you get out with your king out of this potential queen to b3 attack. And now, I don't know, maybe rook to d1, white continues the pressure, and then you play knight to c7, attack the rook to e4, and now knight to a6. Again, with some threats to play knight to c5. But the most important thing is that you don't tolerate this queen on b3. But with this move that Magnus played queen to d5, Hikaru immediately found a beautiful tactical shot. Maybe just for fun, if you like, pause the video and try to see now here the best continuation for white. I wouldn't dare to say white moves and wins the game, but after the move that Hikaru played, Magnus Carlsen was in huge problems. So he had really almost, I would say, a losing position here. Okay, here Hikaru found the stunning queen to b3, lining up now the queen where already the king is. And what should you do? For instance, you try rook to f4 here, then the issue is rook to e8, again, immediately wins the game. You can, of course, get some material for the queen, but of course also the knight is hanging. You can maybe take the bishop, but we'll take also the knight, so we'll be forced to protect the knight on d5, and now white simply retreats with the bishop and has, I think, here completely winning game. So here, after queen to b3, that Hikaru played, Magnus tried knight to f4, but now rook to d6, discovered check and attack against the queen. Here Magnus is forced now to lose the most valuable piece, of course, the queen. And after rook to d8, rook from c to d8, now played by Magnus. Okay, Magnus has some compensation for the lost queen, but the the position is collapsing, I think, here, because Hikaru simply continues with queen to b7. You can of course take out this knight, but this bishop with your knight, but then also this one is falling, and I would say again game over for Magnus. So after queen to b7, knight to e5 by Magnus Carlsen. He's trying to attack the bishop further, and of course gets out of the attack by the queen. Bishop to e4, and now bishop to b6. Okay, although seems still maybe somehow playable for black because this knight are centralized, this bishop is dangerous. Hikaru found I think a beautiful plan here. A4, simply pushing the pawns further, trying somehow to deflect this bishop from the defense, take out this pawn and push this pawn further on the queen side. So good, I think also endgame plan for Hikaru. But first of all, he attacked the knight. Magnus goes for the bishop. Hikaru attacks the bishop again, and now bishop to c5. Even if you try, I don't know, knight to e4, then after f takes e4, you're trying to retreat. We can attack the rook, we can also take the pawn. You don't have to even maybe attack it, but I think queen to a7 is also perfectly fine. Again, messed up game here for Magnus Carlsen. So after move a5, we have bishop to c5 by Magnus Carlsen, bishop to b7. Hikaru tries to keep his light square bishop on the board. Again, a brilliant choice, because actually this bishop is supporting, of course, the potential promotion on the a file. If this pawn is taken, then it can be very dangerous. So Magnus is battling. Magnus is fighting like a lion here. Knight to b3. We have rook to d1. d3, he is advancing still this important pawn here on the d file. Bishop to c5, knight to c5, queen takes a7. Now Hikaru finally grabbed this pawn, and Magnus Carlsen takes also the bishop. We have queen to b7, and I think again here white is completely winning. But you have to now again find the most accurate moves. The players were already under time pressure, Magnus Carlsen of course more. Here Hikaru Nakamura has obviously a winning game because of this passers on the queen side, but after rook from f to e8 and g3 that Hikaru played, Magnus found now the brilliant d2. d2 is a huge threat because of course of rook to e1, and there is only one move that can help you here, and unfortunately for Hikaru, he didn't see that. This would be an epic game by Hikaru, outplaying Magnus Carlsen like this, but unfortunately he almost messed up his whole game with the next move. If you like, again, pause the video and try to see now here the best continuation for white. Now I would really dare to say white moves and wins the game, but again it's tough to see because it's a sequence of moves that you have to see. It's very stunning how these players are setting each other some traps here. So after d2, actually the only winning move is here to move king to f1. This is the way to go. And then after knight to d5, you can take maybe the pawn, but white has here a very black is here tricky move, knight to e3, but still you have to go in front of black's rook, allow even here this double check by the knight and also by the rook, but now you escape simply here to d1. Again, you allow a new check, by the knight, but now after this check you simply step back from the defense of the rook, and now when the rook is taken, you have this resource, queen to a8 and queen to e4. You pick up here the knight, of course, and here finally the position is simplified too much here for black, and with these two passers on the queen side with the support of the queen, this is again completely winning here for white. But instead of king to f1 that Hikaru should have played, he played queen to b4, and now Magnus is back in town because he found now the beautiful rook to d4. Great counter attack here finally by Magnus Carlsen. Of course, if you take queen to d4, then knight to e2 4 can this is now, I don't know, again I would say maybe a drawish position again because of this passers on the queen side. But after rook to d4, that's why Hikaru played queen takes d2, rook takes d2, and now rook takes d2. Now we have a similar position. Here we have knight to e6, and now Hikaru still should be slightly better, but again messed up this position with the move b4, rushed here by pushing the pawns. What he should have played is actually here the move rook to e2, pinning the knight. If for instance somehow knight to c7, then you can, I think, even trade off the rooks and go here, I don't know, somehow get your king there, and I think one of those pawns could be promoted. So this move rook to e2 was again the only chance for Hikaru somehow to spice up the game. But he played b4, king to g8, also an inaccurate move here by Magnus, because he should have probably gone out of this e-file mess that we have seen previously that could have happened. But okay, after rook to king to g8, Hikaru continues with b5. Magnus gets the rook finally closer, and now gets, of course, the king closer. And I think, again, this should be a thematic draw. But the issue for Magnus Carlsen that he was low on clock. He had around, I don't know, 5-6 seconds here, and they're playing this Armageddon game without any increment. That's the messed up part for black. After knight to c5, king to e3 here, really Magnus in a huge trouble. It's not like Magnus is playing here some bad moves or something, but you have to be really fast. King to f4, g6, h4, king to d5, and now Magnus got challenged this way. Hikaru is trying, of course, somehow to get maybe even a passer on this side of the board, but Magnus plays, I think, here the correct choice. Again, king to c6, h5, rook to g8, rook to c2, king to b5, h takes g6, rook takes g6, and after move king to h5, Magnus Carlsen's time ran out, and Magnus lost the Armageddon game. So, this was really beautiful roller coaster. First, Hikaru dominating in this wild opening, but then Magnus Carlsen found really so cool defensive ideas, but eventually lost too much time while calculating, and eventually lost the game, which is a good thing for the tournament, for the neutral lover of chess, I think, because Magnus Carlsen is still in the lead, but we have to say it here, Hikaru Nakamura is now only half of the point behind Magnus Carlsen. Praggnanandhaa still has, I think, realistic chances to make an impact here. Alireza Firouzja is on the 4th place, and Fabiano Caruana on the 5th place. Unfortunately, Ding is not playing his best chess. He is only on the 6th place in this amazing and spectacular chess tournament. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really crazy exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. If you want to see some other games that we have covered so far here in this tournament, check out our coverage. Here are some games that we have analyzed before, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.